Hey, everybody. Why did you come here? What's the purpose of you being here? Why are you here? Have you ever figured that out? Most of us go through a period at some point in our life where we ask ourselves that age old question, what is the meaning of all this? What am I doing here? Does my life have purpose? Does my life have meaning? I think I went through that period back when I was 40. And I went through a divorce after a 20-year marriage. I was living by myself in Grant Park, and I was just going through these whole reasons of why am I here? Does any of it make sense? What mission am I on? What purpose is there? And I think it's fairly common that a lot of us go on what we call a soul-searching journey about what's and why's and where's and how's. If there is a God, if there is, why? Why do we need a God? Maybe there's no God at all. Who are we? What kind of people are we? What kind of person are we? And so we go through all these things. I noticed when I was writing my morning post this morning, sitting here in East Point, Georgia, by my little fireplace, and I was writing about the year I was born in 1955, and part of the post says, when I chose to come here in 1955, did we choose to come here? If we did, why did we choose this moment in history to come here? We could have came here back in Jesus's days. We could have came here. We may come back in the future. All of it's conjuncture. Nobody knows. Nobody knows if we chose to come here or not. A lot of people who are walking more into the enlightenment part of spirituality, a lot of them do believe that it was our choice when we came here. So when I chose to come here, if I did choose to come here in 1955, I have to assume that the world needed me. In 1955, that was the year that Rosa Parks refused to go to the back of the bus. It was also the year that little 14-year-old Emmett Till was murdered. And the South was raging in the civil rights movements across the South. And so if I chose to come here, I chose to come here at that moment, in that time. You know, what is my mission? What is my passion? When I leave here, what will I leave behind? And I know a lot of people feel like maybe their purpose was to come here was to be the doorway for other people to get here. You know, like for me, if I hadn't came here, my daughter Jill wouldn't be here. My daughter Heather wouldn't be here. My grandson Caleb and Chance wouldn't be here. My granddaughter Savannah wouldn't be here. But there's many, many people that come to earth and never have a child. That's not the reason we came here was to procreate or to be the doorway for other people to come here. I wouldn't assume. My aunt Annie Ruth, for years in church, she was the only daughter of my granny's daughters, of all the daughters, that was barren. She would come through prayer lines and go through big evangelists would come to Atlanta. And my Aunt Annie Ruth, my heart would just grieve for her. And I prayed for her many times myself out when I was running Faith Healing Tent revivals. And she never, all through her childbearing years, she'd come up through the prayer line and she'd be weeping and she'd say, because you read in the Old Testament where women were cursed and they were barren and God would open up their womb at some time and let them have children. And so all those stories was out there. And Annie Ruth would come up and she'd just be weeping and she'd like, I want to have a baby. The love of her life, she fell in love with a young man named Robert. And they got married when she was just a young girl, maybe 16, 17 years old. After 3 or 4 years, he left her because she couldn't get pregnant, and it was important to him to have children. And it could have been him, for all we know, but he assumed she was barren. He divorced her. She carried that hurt with her. I don't think she lived to be right at 80 years old, and even up until the day she died, she'd tell you, she said, I still love Robert. All her life, she took Robert with her. And but she was barren. And which brings me to another question. Why, if God's involved in that, which, but for those people that believe that's God's doing, why would God punish such a beautiful young girl through her whole life to live in the sorrow of being barren? And so, anyhow, what is our mission here? Are we still figuring that out? I'll turn 70 this coming September. My life here on earth is on the backside of the back nine. I think it used to be really important to me in my 40s because I've seen a lot of life. I've seen my cousin Connie bury her son at 19. I've seen another cousin of mine bury her daughter at 16. I've seen short lives. I've seen long lives. This is just me, but in the grand spectrum of things, life is like a vapor of smoke. It's only whether you live to be 90 or whether you live to be 19. It's just like a vapor of smoke, as Jesus said. It's quickly gone. And the other thing about it is once you die, there might be great fanfare in the weeks or months right after you die, but people very quickly forget about you, except for that mom that cleaves to that daughter or the son. But once her life is over, nobody else will remember that child. She carries that child with her to the other side. And so life is just really weird and tricky. Did we come to be here? Did we choose to come to be here? If we did, do we know our mission? It's very enthralling and complicated and nuancy and spiritual and carnal, and life is just, I've come to realize humans are strange beings. They're strange, all of us. We have all these weird idiosyncrasies about us. Is it spiritual? Is it flesh and bone? But anyhow, pondering all these questions out there for you this morning. Let me tell you this in closing this right here. Your life does have purpose. Your life, my life, does have a meaning.